Hey guys, so I'm just going to show auto clicker again in this game. I've made one other video before about auto clicker. So here I'm in BlueStacks, but so this is an APK. It works on your phone or it works on an Android emulator, which BlueStacks is one, and I think there's two other ones. There's one called Nox Player, but I think BlueStacks is the most popular. But anyways, there's this program called auto clicker. Now, I'm not sure if I can show the information on this program, but anyways, it's a very small program. It'll download to your phone in less than a second. Like, you can just tell from the file size that it's not adware or malware or anything. So these are all the settings you can see, and inside here you can set up the milliseconds in between clicks. You can set for a certain amount of time, a certain amount of total cycles. Okay, so that's just fine. That's the base settings. You can do multiple target mode, and you can select how many of these circles where it will click on your screen. And you can do stuff like build T1 mounted troops. But what I'm going to do in this video right now is I'm going to, and it's a free program, right? What I'm going to do in this program right now is I'm going to do my Dwarf's Lucky Apple. So this is something that you could use auto clicker for. It's Dwarf's Lucky Apple. Just let a few months go by. Maybe you have thousands of the dwarf. Well, let me claim these crazy eggs because I always forget about this. It's a pet peeve of mine to not have opened and gotten the final rewards. It happens like once a month or so. Well, I got the 4-hour one open. Okay, so let's go to Dwarf's Lucky Apple. Like another I would say the three most useful things are Dwarf's Lucky Apple, opening a bunch of Wheel of Fortunes, or building a T1 wall. Okay, where's Dwarf's Lucky Apple? I think, yeah, okay, right here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the third option. I'm going to click this. I'm going to put this down here to click anywhere on here. The point it clicks on is the blue circle in the very middle. And I'm just going to hit play. And, it will take, with that many, I think the last time I did it, I had 8,000 something. But with that many, look how many times I would have to click. It uses 5 at a time, right? 6,000. So over 1,000 times I would have to click on this screen because you can only do one wish at a time. Setting up auto clicker, which is just a phone to click on your screen for you. But you can set this up and let it run in the background. Like, I can minimize this window and it will still be running even with it minimized to the system tray, right? So like 6692. You can close that out. You can go to your YouTube. Look at a new video. Watch a 30-minute video about whatever you want to watch. If you want to know, I want to show this on my stream, but if you want to know what's really going on in the Middle East and what's really been going on in Ukraine and Russia for the last couple years, you need to go subscribe to this YouTube channel. And he's got hundreds of interviews. He does multiple interviews every single day for the last 2 years. They talk about what is actually happening in Ukraine, about how many people have actually been killed. They talk about what, the whole thing with the Middle East blowing up out of control. I mean, well, Russia and Ukraine have just blown. They've accelerated this war in this last couple days. If you guys want to know what's really going on with all that stuff, go to this guy's channel. He's got maybe a few thousand videos from now on. I mean, it's Judge Napolitano. So it's a retired, federal judge. And He's got hundreds and hundreds of videos about this stuff if you really care about what's going on there. But yeah, you could do that with your Dwarf's Lucky Apple minimized. Watch one of those videos, come back. I think it was at like 6,900 something. Now it's at 6,300. So I got time to watch a video. Let's just watch the let's start watching the first video. I gotta turn down my volume because I know my volume settings are a little retarded because my voice is low. I'll turn this down to about 30%. Let's click on this one. This is his most recent video. Let's watch some of this. Like, if you want to really be informed of what's actually going on, because the media just completely lies about everything. They say approximately 50,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed. It's like over 400,000.
Before Scott Ritter joins us now on two breaking news subjects. Scott, I want to spend a fair amount of time with you on whatever it is the Russians fired today. But before we do, the other breaking news is the indictment of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his fired Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and the issuing by the International Criminal Court of arrest warrants for both. What is the significance, the geopolitical significance,
like a wine cooler,
if any,
but a little bit stronger,
of these momentous steps?
3 times as strong.
Well, from a political standpoint, obviously, it's a sharp blow against Netanyahu, Gallant, and Israel, because the implication behind the indictments, the issuing of these warrants for arrest, is that they have committed criminal acts, acts of genocide. It furthers the case that many around the world, myself included, are making, that Israel is a genocidal state and that the leadership of Israel is accountable for these actions. So it's damaging in that way. But anybody who thinks that Netanyahu will ever have a pair of ICC handcuffs placed on him, it will never happen. First of all, the United States has made it clear that it will never happen. And the United States has, is on record telling the ICC, if you ever arrest an American service member, if you ever try to bring charges, we passed a law that said we can come in and kill you.
Well, they would treat Netanyahu as if he were an American. I mean, let me back up. Suppose his plane needs fuel and he lands in Iceland, and they come out to arrest him on the tarmac. What happens?
The United States puts Iceland on notice that that's an act of war. We will treat it as an act of war. We've said that the ICC has no jurisdiction, and we've said that we will protect him. We treat Israel as an extension of the United States. Again, for anybody out there thinking that I'm happy about this, I'm not. I would love to see ICC handcuffs on this man. I would love to see him in The Hague. I'd love to see him rot in jail. But the United States has made it clear that the ICC has no jurisdiction over Israel. And they've also linked the prosecution of Israelis by the ICC to the same framework of what would happen if they tried to prosecute Americans.
Isn't this a just prosecution? I mean, I read it's actually a ruling by a panel of 3 judges, so the indictment process is different. In America, the prosecutors draft the indictment and they persuade a grand jury to ratify it. Sometimes the grand jury insists on changes which they can make. In the ICC, a panel of 3 judges receive the application for the indictment. They write the indictment, the 3 judges do, and they write an opinion justifying it. The opinion is devastating towards Netanyahu. It is basically what you and others on this show have been telling us for the past, year and a half, going back to October 7th. The slaughter of innocents, the deprivation of food, water, shelter, and medicine to innocents. These are war crimes, and these indictments surely are deserved by any measure of justice other than that as seen through.
This is high-level stuff, and these are actual interviews. These aren't softball questions. This isn't propaganda wanting you to believe a narrative. wanting you to believe only 50,000 Ukrainian soldiers have been killed? Absolute bullshit.
The Zionist eyes.
100%. There's no dispute. I mean, these are damning indictments. They ring with authority. They are fact based. They cannot be challenged factually. But we're not dealing with facts. We're dealing with perceptions, and perception creates its own.
So this guy started up his channel about 2 years ago, and he almost has 500,000 subscribers so far.
Reality, especially when that perception.
This guy, I mean this judge. It's his channel. It's the judge's channel, Judge Napolitano.
Perception is backed by the weight of the United States government, and in this case, we reject it. Keep in mind that the ICC once considered prosecuting American special forces in Afghanistan for murdering Afghan civilians, and they were put on notice that if you ever do that, we will arrest you, we will arrest your families, we will make your life a living hell. And they quickly dropped it. And as like I said, the Congress has passed a law that basically allows the United States to use military force to recover any American personnel that have been who happen to have been arrested by the ICC. And this
what is the ICC? Who owns it, runs it, staffs it, stocks it, makes it legitimate? Is it the UN?
No, the ICC is not the International Court of Justice. The ICJ is a body mandated by the United Nations. It is the highest body in the land for dealing with legal precedent regarding international law. The ICC is a creation of I think they call it the Rome Treaty, but it's
the Treaty of Rome, which the United States and Israel did not sign.
We didn't sign. We're not signatories, so we say it doesn't apply to us. And this was designed to hold to account Africa.
So do you remember when there was all those news stories about the International Criminal Court writing an arrest warrant on Putin? The United States, Israel, and Russia are not members of the International Criminal Court. They don't recognize it as a legal, legitimate governing body of anything. But all the news stories on the left are going to talk about what that means for Putin. He can be arrested now. It doesn't mean anything for any American because we don't participate in their jurisdiction.
African, warlords, dictators, to hold to account, bad Serbs, bad Croats, to hold to account the lessers. It was never meant to hold to account the principals. The ICC was never meant to hold to account the United States or any NATO nation, nor will it ever hold them to account. It just isn't going to happen, which is why the concept of holding Israel to account is absurd on the face, not because of the lack of legitimacy for the cause, but this court wasn't built. It wasn't intended, wasn't structured to go after the Israels of the world, even though Israel deserves it.
Chris, do we have the clip that we ran for Professor Sachs, which is Prime Minister Netanyahu's comments back in April when the word had circulated that he might be indicted? Listen to this. This will aggravate you a little bit, but listen to this, Scott.
You have to hear this to believe this. The International Criminal Court in The Hague is contemplating issuing arrest warrants against senior Israeli government and military officials as war criminals. This would be an outrage of historic proportions. International bodies like the ICC arose in the wake of the Holocaust committed against the Jewish people.
I just want to say, for such a small country, they've killed so many fucking people in the last year. Like when they showed all those bombs just leveling building after building after building. Never seen anything like it. And now they're just bombing the shit out of fucking Lebanon. Isn't Lebanon its own sovereign country? I haven't seen one news report from either side of the aisle ever talk about Lebanon's government and what they have to say about being attacked by Israel. I haven't seen one news report from anybody.
They were set up to prevent such horrors, to prevent future genocides. Yet now, the International Court is trying to put Israel in the dock. It's trying to put us in the dock as we defend ourselves against genocidal terrorists and regimes, Iran, of course, that openly works to destroy the one and only Jewish state. Branding Israel.
Like, they say it's anti-Semitism to speak out against Israel. I've been to Israel. I went to Jerusalem. I traveled there by myself. I stayed for 17 days. I went around all the places you could go in those 17 days. Like, I don't have a problem with Jewish people, but I have a problem with Israel and Israelis. I mean, if you're from Israel, if you're in the Israeli army, you are an Israeli. I have a big problem with Israelis. I don't have a problem with Jews, though.
Israel's leaders and soldiers as war criminals will pour jet fuel on the fires of anti-Semitism, those fires that are already raging on the campuses of America and across capitals around the world.
Does that surprise you, that self-righteous victimization response?
No, I mean, just imagine if the Allies had tried to, pull a Nuremberg without actually defeating Nazi Germany.
I want them to get to the Russia segment of the show. Pretty much every interview they do, they talk about Ukraine, then they talk about Israel. Or they talk about Israel, then they talk about Ukraine and Russia. This video is just going to keep going until they talk about Ukraine and Russia for a while, or this dwarf's lucky apple is done. So we've done almost half of my total amount. I had close to 7,000.
Imagine Hitler and Goebbels and Goering coming up, and they would make similar statements. The German people this, the German people that, da 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 da. Benjamin Netanyahu is a Nazi. He's a Zionist. The same thing. I mean, he behaves as a Nazi. What he's doing to the Palestinians is just as bad as what the Germans did to the Jews. I mean, the Palestinians may not be going up a chimney. No, they're being squashed to death with collapsed buildings that are blown up around them. I mean, death is death, and this is targeted killing by a group that believes themselves to be supreme, and their victims to be human animals. The Nazis viewed the Jews that way.
That's a good point. The Jews do consider themselves to be superior race. Everyone's always heard, and it is kind of true from testing, that Jewish people are some of the smartest people on the planet, if not the smartest. But when you consider yourself to be a superior race, then you can conflate two issues. You can conflate Israel having a population of Jews and biblically being their land, and Israelis in Israel, not necessarily Jews, that their army is killing tens of thousands of women and children. Going on, has it been 2 years already? I don't know. It was October. Was it 2 Octobers ago or 3 Octobers ago? The world's just been going to shit under Biden.
And the Zionists view the Palestinians that way. So it doesn't surprise me that Netanyahu did this. It's what you would expect from a genocidal maniac.
Let's transition over to Russia and Ukraine. What did Russia fire at Ukraine today, and what is the significance of the Russian use of this weapon?
Intercontinental ballistic missile.
Well, first of all, we don't know what Russia fired. When Vladimir Putin gave his address, I think it took everybody but the most read-in intelligence officials by surprise. He announced a new missile, the Oreshnik. It means hazel. Interesting name, because hazel is the wood that the Russians used to use to carve the cudgel that they used to beat non-compliant workers into submission. So the implication is that this is a cudgel that Russia will be using to beat the West into submission. It's as described by Vladimir Putin, it's a medium-range missile, and that's an important term. Generally speaking, medium-range missiles have a range between 1,000 and 3,000 kilometers, which means it's not an intercontinental ballistic missile. The Ukrainians had identified it as an intercontinental ballistic missile, in particular identified it as what's known as an RS-26 Rubieж or Frontier missile system. What's interesting in saying that is that the United States notified Ukraine that Russia was preparing to launch a missile and shared satellite imagery with the Ukrainians. Apparently, they didn't share the highly sensitive other intelligence that the United States had, which led them to know that this wasn't an RS-26. This was an experimental missile by Russia. But the Ukrainians looked at the image and they called it an RS-26, which means that whatever was on the stand at the Kapustin Yar missile test facility looks like an RS-26. That means it's a road mobile system with 6 axles. It uses a launch canister, and it has certain dimensions. So what I believe this is a modification of the RS-26, maybe only using the RS-26 as a 2-stage missile. This might only be a 1-stage, using the first stage with a maneuvering warhead bus. This warhead bus, at least as fired against the Dnipro factory, had 6 independently targeted missiles. But what's interesting about this is each of these independently targeted warheads, each of these warheads had at least 6 large submunitions. So basically, 6 warheads came in, released 6 submunitions each, and there were 36 saturation impacts on the Dnipro factory. Now, the factory that was struck.
I'll tell you what, I worked on ballistic missiles, submarines in the Navy. That's what I'm retired from doing. I was a nuclear electrician's mate. And because the nuclear triad is 3 things, right? It's the missile silos, it's delivery by stealth bomber, and it's delivery by the nuclear ballistic missile submarines, which we have like 18 of them. But each of them carry 24 nuclear missiles. Each missile has up to 12 warheads. They're designed to completely kill cities of over 20 million people from one of their 24 missiles. That's what they're designed to do. Like, it's the scariest shit in the fucking world. That's just the nuclear ballistic missile submarines.
Is an old Soviet-era factory, the Yuzmash facility, used to produce intercontinental ballistic missiles for the Soviet Union. Now it's being used, it was being used, by the United States and Great Britain and Ukraine to build for the Ukrainians short-range and intermediate-range missiles that would be able to launch long-range strikes inside Russia. So Russia just took that factory out. It no longer functions. The missile that they used is nuclear capable, and this is important. It is a nuclear capable system that used a conventional warhead, but could be used for nuclear purposes. And Putin basically said that this missile now can cover all of Europe, and that in the future he will mirror every action by Ukraine in the West, that any escalation will immediately be responded to. So anybody who thought that Russia was bluffing, that you could call Russia's bluff, has now been put on notice that Russia is not bluffing. This is a major escalation. This is bringing in a new category of weapons. It is a qualitative advance, and it has put us dangerously down the path towards nuclear conflict, because all it takes is 1 or 2 more miscalculations. I think Putin, by striking the Dnipro factory, has created a buffer of escalatory possibility, meaning that, let's say Ukraine insanely decides to fire off more Storm Shadow missiles against Russia. Putin said that the missile will be used, and he said, but next, if we use it against built-up areas, we'll give warning to the civilians to evacuate. The implication here is that the next time Russia uses this missile, it'll strike.
So Ukraine launched long-range missiles provided to them by the West into Russia. Russia changed its nuclear doctrine to, if they do it again, allow them to launch nuclear missiles at Ukraine because now they're in a war with the West. They're in a global war, they declared. They launched one ICBM, an international intercontinental ballistic missile goes into lower Earth orbit. But they're saying Russia is saying this is not an ICBM. It only has a range of 30,000 kilometers. An ICBM can be launched anywhere in the world and hit anywhere in the world. But they're saying it's not an ICBM. All the nuclear missiles on submarines are all ICBMs. They go to lower Earth orbit.
Kiev, Bankova Street, the seat of government, and seek to destroy Ukraine's ability to govern itself. And then after that,
they go to lower Earth orbit before they descend. And as they're descending, they hit terminal velocity, the fastest possible speed they can fall to the ground, and they can't be shot down. That's what's scary about the entire nuclear triad and all their missiles. They can't be shot down.
Depending on what escalation takes place. Remember,
Russia's got them too. Russia has submarines also loaded with ICBMs that go to lower Earth orbit.
He said he will hold to account the nations responsible. And he blamed the United States and Great Britain directly. So we may see him.
I worked on them for more than the last 50 years since they've had the technology. The United States has had an ICBM, SSBN submarine in the Atlantic and in the Pacific at all times, ready to launch for the last 50 years. They're ready. They got 16 more of the submarines in dock, ready to go out to sea.
Extend this, for instance, taking out the American missile facility that just the ballistic missile defense facility.
Like we ran drills, battle stations missile. How fast can we launch all 24 missiles? If we could launch all 24 of them in 30 minutes, that was a good time.
It just opened up in Poland, or take out the.
That was a good, set time. Can we do it under 30 minutes, or is it 30 minutes or longer to launch 24 missiles that each can carry up to 12 nukes? That's 288 nuclear warheads that are all 10 to 20 times stronger than what we dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Other one in Romania to strike British targets in the region. So, and once that does, then we create the possibility of NATO in Article 5. Now we're conflict between Russia and NATO, and we all die. That's how dangerous.
And we all die. Former United Nations weapons inspector. And what's on the table here is what we're betting against is we're all fucking dead. Truth. We're all fucking dead.
This is. We are very, very close to reaching the point of no return when it comes to nuclear war. Keep in mind that just within the last 24 hours, Rear Admiral Buchanan of the United States Strategic Command came out and issued a statement in response to the news that Vladimir Putin had signed off on a new nuclear doctrine. And he said that the United States is prepared to engage in a nuclear exchange with Russia. That we believe we can win, and that we won't use all our nuclear force because we're going to win and still maintain nuclear deterrence against the rest of the world. Let me say that one more time so the audience understands what I just said. The United States is prepared to engage in a nuclear exchange with Russia that we think we can win. I would have liked to ask him which cities.
The United States, so fucking crazy. The United States is prepared to engage in a nuclear exchange with Russia that we think we can win. Everybody loses. Over 2,000 nukes. Russia has over 2,000 nukes. The United States has over 2,000 nukes. North Korea has hundreds of nukes that we think we can win.
He's willing to give away in this exchange. And what population numbers is he talking about? Is he talking about only 6 million dead, or are we going to lose?
Well, this admiral is a lunatic. Could the White House possibly, well, the White House is filled with lunacy as well, have authorized something as provocative and absurd as this?
Well, this is a fair question. I mean, somebody had to authorize him to make this statement, but it's a grossly irresponsible statement to make at this time. And let me tell you why. Because if I'm a Russian listening to that, that tells me that the Americans believe they can fight a limited nuclear war and win it. That means that they're preparing to win it. When you say that you're going to retain sufficient stockpiles to continue deterrence posture, that means that you're probably thinking about a preemptive strike against the Russians to take out Russia's capabilities, because that's the only way an exchange works that you can walk away from. You can't ride out a Russian attack. Russia has enough capability to just flatten every aspect of the United States. But if we
what is this admiral's name again, Scott?
Buchanan. Rear Admiral Buchanan. If you Google it,
is there any question? Is there any question in your mind, but that the use of the Oreshnik was a direct response to American use of ATACMS and British use of Storm Shadows reaching into Russia?
There's no doubt in my mind, and Putin said as such. I also communicated with some Russians. Apparently, the Storm Shadow attack struck a Russian command and control facility.
So this isn't a video I've watched before. This is just their most recent video that I clicked on. I haven't watched this one yet. Anyways, I'm stopping the video now. Like, thank you. If you stayed and you watched all the way to this point, I'd like to ask you to go to the Judging Freedom page, go to his site, subscribe, click the bell, get all notifications, and as you find the time, watch dozens of hours of his content from the last 2 years. All right, thanks a lot, guys. And that's how you shut down the program. You just click that X I just clicked, and then you click the one up here, and that shuts down the auto clicker program. All right, thanks again.